Let's go back to that top story, though. The so-called tax holiday takes effect right now. Shoppers won't pay the harmonized sales tax on a number of products. Here to tell us what those are and what this means for everybody, here's CB24's Andrew Brennan, who is live in Mississauga with the latest. Andrew.
Yeah, Phil, we've been at Tavora Foods, which is a Portuguese grocery store, and the owner was saying that he welcomed having the announcement here. And if more announcements like this happen in the future, he would be happy to host them again here as well. And this store is probably very indicative of some of the savings that people can take advantage of for the next 2 months, because not only does it operate as a grocery store, and most things that are not prepared, fresh foods, already do not have GST or PST or HST, the harmonized sales tax here in Ontario, on them already. But some of the ancillary, the prepared products, such as, well, here you've got pastel de natas, those delicious egg custard tarts. Those are prepared. Those normally have taxes, no more. You have things like their chicken, frango, as you'd say in Portuguese. That also no longer going to be taxed. But there are some challenges we've been hearing along the way, because a lot of these changes are on the backs of small and medium-sized independent businesses to have to implement. The question is with the business community already dealing with what it has been since COVID, how are they feeling about this? So let's bring in Dan Kelly with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, and we always appreciate your time, sir. The first thing I want to ask you is what you mentioned on social media the other day, that you found out just before the deadline that this not necessarily is going to be enforceable. Now, we did get an answer today from Minister Valdez about what exactly is going to happen. So I want to ask you, starting off, what your understanding is right now.
Look, the government has put in place this GST, HST holiday starting today, but we just learned, as you said last night, that businesses are not required to put it in place. So it is an option for business owners to offer the savings or not. And we're hearing from some companies that are not planning to do this, including large businesses. PepsiCo Frito-Lay has said that they're not going to pass on the GST or HST reductions to suppliers like convenience stores and grocery stores. So that puts additional cash flow pressure on those businesses. Apparently that's okay.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, just to make sure I understand through the supply chain how this would work. Wouldn't the businesses, or ultimately if the supplier is ultimately not going to be providing the tax relief there, can the business not ultimately then claim that later on and get the money back, similar to how if you go on holiday and you're in a foreign country, you don't want to pay their taxes, so you would ask for reimbursement later?
Yes. So just yesterday, the government confirmed that, in fact, no business, whether it's a manufacturer, wholesaler, or even a retailer, is required to participate in the GST, HST holiday. If they don't, then the consumer, the business, or even the final end consumer can go back to the Canada Revenue Agency and request a refund. How practical that is on the ground is anyone's guess. But we just learned that last night. That no retailer, no manufacturer is required to participate in the GST, HST holiday. Look, most businesses will, especially at the retail and restaurant level, simply because they don't want to lose the customer to the guy down the street. If you're not offering, in Ontario's case, a 13% reduction because of the HST holiday, that could motivate somebody to leave your toy store, your gift shop, or the grocery store and just go down the street.
Well, we did hear from Minister Rishi Valdez today, and what she was saying is that ultimately the CRA is not going to be spending a lot of time focusing on small businesses and whether or not they're complying. However, she did say that would be under the expectation that they would be participating, right, and that they're in good faith ultimately trying to follow these rules for the 2 months as they're written as best as possible. But essentially, she didn't say that this is not going to be enforced directly. She also didn't say that this was optional. So what do you think about how the government and the Minister for Small Business is talking about this now?
Well, that's typical from politicians. This is not mandatory, but they want to make it look like it is, and so that's the that's the challenge right now. Is they, of course, want everyone to participate. Otherwise, this is going to look very foolish on the part of the government to put in place this last-minute holiday. But that's the rub of it. The fact that we're even having this conversation says that the government has absolutely butchered the communications around this. This was a last-minute tax change with massive implementation costs for small businesses. Tons of them stayed up late because they had to change their computer systems, their point-of-sale systems last night to put this in place because they couldn't do it earlier as they as they had to charge the GST or HST before that. It's been a complete mess with huge compliance costs, and I'm hoping that today goes a little bit smoother.
Well, Dan, we did hear from the owner of this grocery store. He said, based on his POS, and I know sometimes people in retail call the point of sale a different kind of POS, but we'll ignore that for a second. He said it was based on his program, easy enough to be able to change things over. Categories, subcategories, relatively simple. But you're saying that it seemingly is a bit more, you're calling it a mess, and I'd like to know why.
Yeah. Sure. Look, for restaurants and for grocery, it isn't the huge challenge that it is for mixed goods retailers. Basically, in a restaurant setting, everything carried GST, HST, and now it doesn't during this 2-month period, other than perhaps a few mixed drinks. In the grocery store, all those products that had GST or HST in the past are now going to be free of that for the next couple of months. That's not as big a deal. The challenge is for those that are selling toys and gifts and hobby stores. For them, they have to go through every single item and make judgment calls about whether it's taxable or not over the next 2 months. Just as a couple of examples, a doll for play, not taxable. A doll for collecting, taxable. A Lego set oriented at kids, not taxable. A Lego set that's more complicated for older teens, that will remain taxable. The glue and the paint for the model airplane, if it's included in the box and the box is oriented at a kid, then that's not taxable. If it's sold separately, it is. So these are the decisions that business owners are having to go through every single item in their toy store, hobby store, and make judgment calls. And if they get it wrong, the fear factor is that they're going to have an audit from the Canada Revenue Agency in March or April.
Dan, we have to wrap there, but in 5 seconds, as much as this is a mess, are you on board with this for stimulating the economy?
There are way better ways of reducing taxes and pressures on Canadians than a complicated tax holiday that's temporary in nature. We got the GST going up in a couple of weeks. On top of that, that's just going to make all those same goods more expensive. Small business owners' heads are spinning right now.
Dan, I appreciate your time. Dan Kelly with the CFIB. Thank you again.
Anytime.
Now we're going to send it back inside, Phil. More reaction coming. Back to you for now.
All right, thank you very much for that important conversation. Some clarification there, Andrew. Thank you.